I apologize for reading off stats here, but just from our last game against Texas A&M, they came in the nation, 12th in the nation in scoring defense at 59 points per game. We had 81, which is the most they've given up this season. They're 11th in the nation in field goal percentage defense at 37%. We shot in that game 53%, which is the highest for them this season. And they've been on average allowing teams 19 free throw attempts per game. We shot 32, which is the second highest for them this season. So offensively, we had some stats against a very good defensive team that are good. And I think part of the reason why is the thing that I harped on in our Alabama game about us taking quick early shots with 26 seconds and 25 seconds on the shot clock and not sharing the basketball. So I think our guys hopefully can see the results of them not taking hurried jump shots.
Coach, obviously when you look at Auburn, KT and Chris Stinson kind of stick out, kind of the two-man show they've got. Just talk about preparing for those two guys.
Yeah, you're talking about two guys who's averaging 19 points a game. I think they're first and third in the SEC in scoring. And it's going to be a task for us to be able to contain both guys. Usually you have one guy on the team that you have to contain, but having to contain two guys like that, especially when two of them are on the perimeter, it's going to be a difficult task. And they're different players. Denson is a guy that he's kind of like Chicken in the regard that he can just find a crease and get to the basket against anybody. And then obviously Harrell's a guy who can shoot the basketball. So between Chicken and Fred being able to score for us on the offensive end, they're going to do a great job on the defensive end. But it's going to be a team defensive effort. We've already talked about us being 5-on-2. Every time one of those guys catches the basketball, we need to be 5-on-2 against those two players.
Coach, I know we talked about the consistency from game to game. What are you looking forward to get that accomplished?
Well, I think just the mindset more so than anything. I don't know if there's anything we can do as far as preparing for Auburn, but just kind of hark back on our guys learn how to do with just a little bit, a tad bit of success. And it's more so got to be something from an attitude standpoint than anything we do X's and O's, Y, or anything we do with our practices. So hopefully our guys are maturing. I think that's the biggest step in order to coming out and having success against Auburn.
You've had a lot of success here at home this year, and the crowds are starting to come back out a little bit more. Is that something that you talk to your players about, kind of creating that home environment, the kind of like you talked about in the past, the home, historically is a place that used to be a tough place to play. Y'all trying to bring that back?
Well, I don't talk about it. I know sometimes, our guys have mentioned in locker room talk about being disappointed sometimes about the crowd, but I said, you guys are in total control of that. You win ball games and you play well, people come. So don't say anything about the crowd. Do your part.
Coach, we saw it a couple of times in the non-conference schedule, and then against Ole Miss and Auburn. Against A&M and Ole Miss, down late in the games, but they don't seem to get rattled. Obviously, that was a point of concern last year. Is it something you point to? Is it just experience gained from last year? But it seems like your guys never lose their cool down the stretch.
Well, I think it has to do with experience, but it also has to do with me harping about how we fall apart at times against good teams when we have some adversity. And I think it always helps that we've had that adversity at home. So now how do you deal with that adversity on the road? But I think it's have to do with experience, but I couldn't pinpoint it.
With everything that's happened to IJ this year, talk about having an experienced guy like Trevante this year as opposed to last year. He was kind of the only guy that you could, that was a true point guard that you could depend on. But what has he brought to the table this year, especially with IJ's troubles?
Well, I think he's improved, and I'm not saying this to belittle Trevante, but a lot of times you don't notice him on the court, and I think that's a good thing. I think last year when you noticed Trevante was for some of the things that he was doing bad as far as turnovers, not seeing open people and things like that. But there's stretches of time that Trevante goes unnoticed out there, and I think that's a really good thing as a point guard. That means that he's not making mistakes, he's not turning the basketball over, he's handling his defensive assignments. I think Trevante Blovin has really improved as a basketball player, and I think he's handled his role really well. It's hard when you have a guy who's played over 30 minutes a ball game, and then he comes in and he's not the starting point guard, and he gives up that starting point guard spot to a freshman and not playing as many minutes as he played last season, even though he played well. I think he's really handled all of that adversity really well.